Good morning. My name is Darcy Pippins, and I'm representing Southwest Colt at the National Foreign Language Center Virtual Summit. I'm a teacher from Oklahoma, and I'm going to share with you my presentation today on how to teach a novel. So I've been teaching with novels for many years. I think I gave up the textbook back in 2003, and we read 4 novels a year at each level. I've taught levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Currently, I'm teaching 3, 4, and AP Spanish language at Norman High School in Oklahoma. So basically, the novels are the first priority as a teacher. Teaching 101 is to create a strong sense of community in your classroom. Doing a lot of personalizing with the kids, speaking to them, getting to know them. Spending the time learning their names the first day. It's just so important for them to feel safe and secure and comfortable taking risks and creating with the language in your classroom. Part of ACTFL's core practices, one of which is designing an oral interpersonal communicative tasks. In order to do this, kids have to feel safe, and if they don't feel safe and secure in your classroom, then that will be an impossible thing. So spend the time with the kids, spend 2 to 3 weeks just really getting to know them, share things about yourself so that they can feel safe and feel like they're in a family environment. So why do I pick novels, or why do I use novels? Well, obviously, I'm a teacher that I can't just pull stories out of my head. I really appreciate those authors that write these novels that are specifically for language learners, so that I have the compelling input that I can use for my classroom. And so one of ACTFL's core practices, actually the first one, is facilitating target language comprehensibility. In order to do this, you've got to have that compelling input. Language acquisition comes from much input and very little output, no output actually. And in the first few years of language learning, it's 90% or more of your input, and you want it to be interesting. The kids are not going to engage and or acquire language if it's not interesting to them. So these novels are wonderful. I remember back in the day, there was maybe 1 or 2. Now there are so many to choose from. So compelling input, it eliminates the need for motivation. And according to Krashen, when you get compelling input, you acquire whether you are interested in improving or not. So choosing a novel is a very important thing. You have to think about your goals, your learning goals, and your proficiency level of your students. So that taking that into consideration, also a compelling, cultural, and comprehensible novel. Something that you know your kids, right? You've spent the time to get to know them, and you know what they're interested in. There are certain things that would be good in your classroom, and you're the only one that will know that. And don't be afraid to, once you start a novel in the classroom and it's kind of flat, to stop reading it and pick something else. So I have a few favorites here. I'm gonna move my little face so I can see. Eddie El Elefante is a elementary level book. We use it in our elementary Spanish program in my district. Lots of repetition, counting, adjectives, family. Just a great book, illustrated and amazing, written by Emily Ibrahim. And then Brandon Brown, Quiero un Perro, which is Brandon Brown Wants a Dog, by the great Carol Gobb. Wonderful starter book in a novice level class about pets and family and relationships, and just fabulous. Lots of cognates and lots of comprehensible language in that one. And then there are all sorts of Brandon Brown books that you can kind of continue with the sequels of each of those books. El Chico Global, written by my friend Leslie Davison, is super compelling. So she traveled to Singapore, and so it's about a boy that travels, a traveling student. I haven't taught this book, but there's been some major, great reviews on the book. Very recommended. Ella Keko, written by Katie Baker, the great Katie Baker. She's from Idaho. She taught with me in Oklahoma for a few years, was my student teacher. Wonderful, great books from her. Mata la Piñata is a great book for boys, really, I think. Christy Placido wrote this book, and it's it's kind of a coming of age story where the boys are tired of having piñatas at their party, and I guess the last piñata comes to life and kind of starts chasing them around. Las Aventuras de Isabela from written by Karen Rowan. This book is cool because it's a novice level book and each chapter is its own story. So you don't have to read cover to cover. You can kind of pick and choose what you want. And I do want to mention Esperanza is one of my very favorite books. In fact, I love it so much that I actually read it in level 4. It's written in both present and past tense, as is El Nuevo Houdini, I believe. So you can kind of differentiate with this book, and it's culturally rich. It's about a Guatemalan family that's escaping Guatemala to live a safer life in the United States. Selena is a new book written by a new author, Nellie Hughes, and it's just the story of Selena and her life in novice Spanish. All great books. So let's see if I can move on here. So basically, you're going to want to pre-read your novel before you start teaching it. And you're going to plan with backward design model, which is a core practice. You're just going to look for verbs, phrases, vocabulary words that you want to pre-teach before opening the book with your students, because you want it to be 90% comprehensible to them. You don't want them struggling to read a book. If it's over their head, they shut down really quickly, and it turns into a pulling teeth versus just like watching their eyes light up when they're excited about actually being able to read. So remember that. You're going to look for cultural products, practices, perspectives. You can create culturally themed thematic units around these books. Every book is rich in culture, so that's always very important. And then reader's theater is also fun, and you can look for some scenes that would be good for reader's theater. Lots of dialogue, lots of characters, so that your kids can get actually be the book. And then personalizing the book, making it personal, like find a book that your kids are going to be interested in. I know in my community, soccer is huge, and La Llorona is a book written about a girl named Lainey who goes to soccer camp, and it's pretty compelling for my kiddos. They're pretty interested in that. So just know that find books that you can personalize. Here is the backward template that I use in planning my novels. I got this from Jason Fritz, and I actually fill this out for every chapter of every book that I read. And I put them in, I'm old school, I put them in binders, 3-ring binders, in plastic sleeves, along with other activities that I use with each book. So there's several columns here. The TPR column, total physical response is TPR. And those are verbs. So you're going to look through your chapter book, and you're going to pick out verbs that are concrete, that they can demonstrate comprehensibility using actions. The second column is TPRS, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, and PQA, which is personalized questions and answers. Both, very similar to TPR, but you might be doing some personalized question and answer with your students, and some answers really off the wall that a kid gives you, and you turn it into a story using those key phrases that they're going to see in the book to get that repetition. So those are some phrases and words that are maybe not as concrete that you can put in a story to give them that high frequency, that repetition. Third column is cognates. That's going to come in the reading process. When you're reading through the book and you see a word like importante, you're going to maybe ask the kids, hey, ¿cómo se dice importante en inglés? And more than likely, one or two will say important. So those are just some, cognates in that column. And then the last column is low frequency vocabulary, words that they probably won't use in intermediate conversation often, that are maybe pop up in the story here and there. So we're going to look at an actual sample of Brandon Brown, Hace Trampa, which is cheating. This is chapter 1. It's just a passage of the book, but I want you to look at this passage and kind of try to pick out words that would be TPR words, words that are very concrete. My first instinct is to put habla in that column. Habla is talk, so you can demonstrate comprehension by doing a gesture there. Le dice is really good. You put your finger to your mouth and kind of le dice. That's one that's really good with TPR. Observa, you could do something like that with TPR. TNA also could be good, where you've got your hand and you've got something in your hand having it, for TPR. TPRS, also TNA, quiere, those are all really good words to use with PQA. ¿Tienes una mascota? Do you have a pet? ¿Cuántas mascotas tienes? How many pets do you have? So just by talking to the kids about their lives, you're using tiene over and over again, giving them that repetition so that when they're ready to read, they will understand the word. Another good TPRS word might be, I'm looking here, es necesario might work, or es muy importante. Those are all kind of cute, fun phrases that you can use with PQA and TPRS. Cognates, there's a bazillion of them. Documento, importante, nervioso, even firme is a good one for cognate. Situación. So you get it. This is kind of how I plan backward with the book, and I categorize those words so I know what to teach, what to pre-teach. Some maybe not so frequent words for this section. Maybe formulario would be one, I think, that's not as frequent. Obviously, Liam Bradley is a name. So you can just look through this and kind of gauge how you want it to organize. But getting the repetition is super important, and you want to do that. You want this book to be 90% comprehensible when the kids are reading it. So TPR, TPRS, we talked about, PQA, all great. Charades, catchphrase, those are, acting out the word and letting the students guess the word, or having them in groups do this. Box of Lies and Word Sneak are both games that I kind of stole from Jimmy Fallon that I use in my higher level classes. When you get a chance, obviously if this was a longer presentation, I would maybe do some examples of that, but look them up. Infographics, we're going to talk about those in a minute, but those are like more authentic that you can use to actually get the repetition. Songs, immediately I'm thinking of the song Soy Yo by Bomba Estéreo, and it is like just really repetitive. Soy yo, soy yo, soy yo. Really a good song to use at the novice level. Movie talk, great way to get in some repetition using picture talk and movie talk, where you get maybe a short video clip and you can pause it and talk about it. Quizlet is a flashcard site that I know a lot of teachers use. Gimkit, my kids love this. You can set it up to where you're answering questions about the book, or you're just doing vocabulary practice, and the kids answer the questions and they earn money to buy certain things, and they compete against each other. So it's really pretty compelling, that game. And then Flipgrid is one that we're kind of experimenting with on how to do with a lot of input. Okay, we talked about infographics. Here's one that I searched up right before teaching Brandon Brown. This is about pets. ¿Cuál mascota es tu favorita? Which pet is your favorite? And it has kind of a little pie chart, and it talks about 80%, 80% de las personas les gustan los perros. They like the dogs, and then 16% like cats, and 4% fish. And it's authentic. It's created by speakers of the language for speakers of the language, but very compelling and very comprehensible. Here's another one about cats. 70% of our panel said that considered cats as the most independent pet. And then it's comparing with dogs at 24% and fish at 7%. This one is another 68% of our panelists consider dogs to be the most intelligent pet. And then compared to gatos, cats, and fish. So just another example of how to use infographics. Here's one that I use with my AP Spanish class, and it's about DACA, and it talks about like what it stands for, who is eligible, and then what you need to do to be DACA status, how much it costs, all of this. So very cool. You could put this up on your screen in school and just talk about it. Ask your kids what all this stuff means, see if they can interpret it and dissect it. We also use Mascotas y Personalidad, which is a lesson that Christy Placido created in Teachers Pay Teachers. And what she did was she took an authentic reading source, and she kind of made it more comprehensible for her students. And so it's more like an embedded reading. So it's still authentic, but it's simpler so that they understand it. It's not over their head. So it talks about, what does your pet say about your personality? What type of pet does the type of pet that you have reveal things about your personality? And then it talks about dogs being you know, more health for people that typically have dogs are more healthy, less stress, less depression. And cats, people that have cats or maybe have more adventure or are more adventurous and creative. Just another way to get that repetition in before reading a book. Here's another example from her unit. You're looking at these pets and you're picking out from the reading what owners' personalities are according to each pet. So reading strategies. I read all the time in class. It's really almost like a language arts class for me. I never ask my novice students to read out loud. I actually am a control freak, and I like to read. I like to use my teacher voice, and I maybe add some passion and some dynamic to my voice to kind of keep it compelling. If they do read, they're reading with each other, and they have jobs. And for example, they would read maybe a chapter or a page. One student would read the first page while the other student writes questions in their L1 language. And then that reader will answer those questions and then they'll switch. So they kind of know, they kind of have a job and they can focus on that. There are audiobooks for each of these readers. So if you get tired or you just want to have them hear an authentic speaker of the language, the audiobooks are a great option for that. Sentence strips are cool for reviewing and giving more repetition. After reading a chapter, maybe the next day you have I cut up a poster board and I laminate it and I write on it with dry erase. And you can write sentences and then mix them up and have the kids put them in order. While they're reading, sometimes I have them doodle the story. Like I'll say, get out a piece of paper and I'm going to read. And I want you to just, as you're listening, doodle and jot things down that you think, you know, that I'm reading. And then I have them just turn in their doodles and give them a check. You know, good job, way to listen. Personalizing. If you come to a part in the book that you know your student little Timmy, is a skateboarder or something, and you're asking him, you know, maybe it's talking about Brandon Brown on a skateboard, and so you mentioned Timmy in the book as you're reading, and it kind of, you know, perks the class up a bit. Or you can even ask, who likes to do this? Who plays soccer? Who plays football? Who has has pets? So obviously taking some time to kind of circle the book as you're reading is good. Running dictation is a cool game. You write sentences down and you put them outside your classroom and they run out, they read them and they dictate them to their friends. Reader's theater, we're going to talk about that. I love it. There are scenes in all the books that are perfect for reader's theater. It's a class effort. If you don't have enough characters, you can always add more, like a bus driver or a cafeteria lady. And you can add dialogue. I always write the scripts myself. I pre-write them. The students never split into groups and write their own scripts. That's just way too much output for them. So I control it that way, where I give them a script. I have them read. We select groups for costumes, set design, technology, lighting, all of that. And so these kids are pre-reading their script, and then they're acting their script out while they're reading it. And then at the end, I film it and I play it for them, and they're listening to it. So it's triple the input. See, I have a sample here of this is a scene from Hija de Sastre, which is a book about the Spanish Civil War, and Amelia is listening to her parents talk. I'll skip through to this is Amelia, and she's outside her parents' bedroom, and these are her parents. I know their costumes are crazy. I know that we have to tell Amelia our secret, is what Dad's saying. And she's the narrator. We've got kids controlling the lights. We had kids that designed the costumes. We had kids that are actually the actors. So they're all involved. And then at the end, I tape it. I'm obviously the filmer, so I kind of make sure everybody gets in the shot. So the culture is how you hook them. This is big. You want to find a book that's rich in culture, and you want to create a cultural simulation that takes your kids out of their comfort zone. I know in Oklahoma, a lot of my students have never left the state. So in order for them to gain perspective, which is really my goal, I have to create that cultural situation in my classroom so that they are understanding of, you know, what it was like to be in the Spanish Civil War, or you know, when you're in Argentina during the dirty war and your friend says something negative about the government and the next day he's not there. So I basically, one of the things I like to do is employ my administrators in my learning environment. So I recruit a student that's kind of a good actor, and I ask my principal to come in and disappear the student while we're reading the book Guerra Sucia, which is about the dirty war in Argentina. So it's hilarious. My administrator is so good. She's gotten so much better at doing it. She'll come in with her walkie-talkie and be like, I need to speak with Tommy Smith. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And Tommy will put up create a power struggle and fight with it, not fight, but argue with the principal and make a scene. And then finally Tommy goes with the principal, and then you look at the reaction of the students. It's pretty cool. So basically, Reader's Theater is huge. Music, movie talk, also great ways to incorporate culture. Authentic resources, guest speakers. Always bring people into your classroom and share with your community what you're doing with your kiddos, stakeholders, all of that. So grading, we have comprehension checks throughout the entire time that I'm reading these books. I'm always asking them if they understand. I have a hand slapper noisemaker thing, and when I have it and I tell them, okay, if you hear the slapper hand, I want you to give me the next word in English as we're reading, or if I call on someone, I want them to read the sentence. So these are all just ways that I am making sure that I'm doing my job by and that they're comprehending the book 90% or more. I don't grade my formative assessments, and if I do have to put a grade in the grade book, I'll just give everybody a check or a point or 2 points that day for participating. Grading really is not an important thing for me. I just want them to advance in their proficiency. But I do use my comprehension checks and my formative assessments to guide my instruction. If they're not getting it, then it's me. It's on me, not on them. So I have to, tweak what I'm doing in order to make sure that they're understanding. And listening, you can always do a little quiz at the end of the day, like an exit slip where you give them a post-it note and you just say, okay, class A, I'm gonna give you guys 3 sentences, and I want you to just write down what they, or put true or false or something, and then talk about, like, Emily was outside of her parents' bedroom and she heard the secret, true or false. And this is all in the target language. That's kind of another way that you can see how well they're understanding. Summative assessments are few. I don't have very many. I usually do one at the midterm and then one at the end of the year, but they're service projects. They're authentic. They're writing letters to, and I left that blank because it could be, we wrote letters to the mayor in Guatemala City about the dumps. And so we really, and tweeting also is great. We use kiva.org, which is a lender site for service projects. We pick people that we want to donate money to help them in their, earn money so that they can help their families. So there are lots of ways that we do this. There's also the art. We use arpilleras, which are really cool, and I'm going to show you a picture of those in just a minute. They're really cool to demonstrate what they understood about the unit, and then they can talk about their arpilleras in the target language. But it's all about choice. You want to give your kids choice on assessment. Here are some examples of some arpilleras that my students did. The one on the right is ¿Dónde están los desaparecidos?, which means where are the disappeared? And it was when we were doing Guerra Sucia. And then they talk about it and they compare it to another arpillera that's they find online. And it kind of gives you a little brief description of what an arpillera is at the top there. But these are just ways that your artistic kids can actually, show off their talent and then also use their target language abilities to describe it. We also narrate stories with Flipgrid. So let me show you this video. This was after La Llorona, and this student has a storyboard that he created, and he is going to talk about it in the language.
Se llama Maria. Maria tenía un esposo y Maria tenía dos hijos.
Okay, so he's saying there was a woman named Maria. She had a husband and 2 children. He's talking about the La Llorona story, and he's narrating it in Spanish while he's looking at his pictures. So this is another way that you can do an assessment with Flipgrid. So we also have interpersonal and presentational writing. I have my kids do memes. They tweet. They do the tweeting on Google Classroom, so they're not actually on the Twitter site just because some kids don't have Twitter and, liability there. We write love letters from characters' perspective. We do lots of recommending lots of predicting, and we, like Landon was doing in the video prior, describing illustrations. So these are all just ways that they can write and, you know, use their language interpersonally. Then we have some of my favorite books here that we talked about before, and these are some of the cultural things. I obviously, I'm teaching higher levels these days, so I love Vida y Muerte en la Mara Salvatrucha. That is one that wasn't on the slide earlier. It's about El Salvador and the Civil War and gangs and identity, and it's just so powerful to teach. I love that book. Guerra Sucia also is great. I teach that in level 4. It's about the dirty war in Argentina. Great culture there. And then La Hija de Sastre is an intermediate book that I use as well. Spanish Civil War, we do a Guernica unit with art, and we talk about the war, and I do cultural simulations where I blindfold the students and I just have them sit, and they have to be completely silent. And then you know, I just let them sit there with blindfolds on, and they can't talk, and it kind of gives them some sort of simulation of what happened during that war. I do read this authentic text, Senderos Fronterizos, with my AP students. It's a memoir of Francisco Jimenez and his how he immigrated to the United States, and it talks about family and personal identity and human rights. So all of these are so powerful, and really are the best way to teach, in my opinion, is the compelling input, and you get that in books. And there are so many books to choose from these days in your classes. So my advice to you, if you've never used a book in your classroom, maybe just like start with one book this year, and just kind of go through and, you know, read 15, 5-10 minutes a day, and then use what's in that book as your input. So you're not having to create your own stories. You've got this story that you're reading in your classroom that you can use to, facilitate language acquisition. And that's really, what it's all about. So let go of your textbook and try a novel. Try a reader that is specifically written for language learners, and see how your kids react. And if, like I said, if it's not compelling and you start out thinking maybe this isn't the right book, don't hesitate to stop and, change books. And I know that maybe some of you don't have funding. I'm in Oklahoma. We don't have funding. So I do write grants, PTA grants. We have a foundation that I write grants from. But if you think about it, a class set of books, if you get it in bulk, they're $5 each. So you get 30 books, $150. That's so much cheaper than textbooks or technology. So really consider that, and please don't hesitate to email me, dpippins@norman.k12.ok.us. I would love to talk to you about books. And thank you very much. Thank you to the National Foreign Language Center, and you all have a wonderful day.